Hi guys, I'm Louis Sun, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about law of attraction, vibration, and becoming the deliberate creator of your ever-expanding life experience. Today, I'm going to talk about misconceptions as it relates to the shadow and repressed and compensatory desires, and how these misunderstandings of how these things work and what the actual vibrational nature of them are keep us from becoming who we really are and understanding true and authentic desire, and therefore being able to actually legitimately move our energy where our soul is actually moving rather than where our mind thinks it should, based on these repressed or compensatory desires, what Carl Jung and many people call the shadow. So, practically, I want to start by expressing the two misconceptions about what the shadow is, generally, that I see moving about the world and in the spiritual community and self-help, psychological world, whatever. The first one, and the more surface level one, is that the shadow is something about kind of embracing being kind of a ruthless dick to people, or being rude or mean or ruthless, or embracing your dark desires to be mean and to call people out, and that people think that this is somehow what authenticity is, and that's not really what it's about. Now, integrating your actual shadow may come with a little bit of that, because there's a lot of resistance that you garner repressing your true desires for things, and sometimes releasing that resistance and becoming and integrating those real desires kind of does come with being a little bit more of a dick than you were willing to be before, because, well, people tell you that it's wrong to want what you want, and that it's wrong to want to be valued by people and whatnot. We'll get into that. But yeah, that's the first misconception. The second misconception is that the shadow is about validation-based desires, for people to validate that you're better than other people, for people to validate your perspective, to tell you that you're right, for people to approve of you, for your desire to fit in, for your desire, like more base kind of desires like that. That's not really the shadow either. That's based on a lack of self-validation. And this brings us into the nature of the heart of the shadow for almost every person walking on this planet today, because our social climate trains us to rely on the guidance or thoughts of others, to rely on validation from others, to prove ourselves, etc. Our deepest, darkest shadow for pretty much every single person is to self-validate. It's to genuinely love yourself, to embrace how awesome you are, to really appreciate the nooks and crannies of yourself, and to validate your own perspectives of things, to embrace your own rightness, which no one else can do for you, because everything is so subjective and so interpretive that you have to really validate your own self, validate your own guidance, what feels good and what feels like guidance to you and what doesn't. You need to validate that for yourself. That is everyone's deepest shadow, if you want to call it that, is to genuinely validate, to love and appreciate yourself, and not look for that outside of yourself anywhere. And that's where we get that second, more understandable misconception about the shadow, is that we don't validate ourselves, and it's very, very ingrained in us not to do so. So therefore we start to think that our repressed desires are about receiving validation and recognition from people, and that's not really what the shadow is about. I genuinely think that what Jung was getting at, and just what our soul is getting at when it comes to the shadow, is that genuine sense of self-validation and self-love. That's at the heart of it. Now, what's a little bit more external to that is things like having big dreams and wanting people to show that they genuinely value you. Not validate you, but genuinely value you and consider you. Those things are things that we're trained to think that are wrong, and not just through the things that people say to us, but through the way that they treat us, and then the way that they respond to us when you feel that they don't value you and they invalidate that you want to be valued and for them to show you that. Now, this isn't to say that you go out to every person in your life, every person that you consider yourself to be close to, and trying to get them to do this. This is about embracing that internal desire and being able to discern between who is really willing to do that and who is not. And also seeing, from a place of alignment and lightness, not from a place of insecurity or resistance or doubt or fear or guilt or any negative emotion, being like, hey, you need to show me that you value me. No, it's not really about that. You may need to go through some stages of that, and you may need to release your repressed anger and try your best to do it in the least resistant or least messy way possible, of course. But really, it's about not just only trying to attract that from other people outside of your life, because everybody in your life doesn't value you right now. It's not really about that. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you really do need to genuinely attract better people for you, more compatible people for you, people who are willing to show that they value you into your life. And other times, yeah, you can talk to people about what you're wanting in the relationship, and sometimes they'll come up to speed with it, and sometimes they won't. So yeah, and then like another common repressed genuine shadow desire is the desire to have big dreams, like really, really embracing what you're wanting, or the desire to be a little more lackadaisical, to be a little more lazy, to be a little more laissez-faire, like things like that we're told are wrong that aren't actually wrong. That's what the true nature of the shadow is about discovering those repressed desires that you think are wrong because not only people's words, but your experiences with them have told you that they're wrong and you repress them. That's really the nature of the shadow. It's not about these validation-based desires about wanting to be better than other people, or it's definitely not about learning how to be an asshole to people or to be mean to people and to call them out and demand things out of them. That's not the shadow. That's all ego stuff. But yeah, I think that's about it. But yeah, so you need to find your own processes of going about how to discover these desires and how to see what compensatory desires you have. And when I say compensatory desires, I mean desires that are rooted in validation from others. These are things like wanting to fit in, just validation or conditional love itself, wanting to be better than others, whether that's through morality, self-righteousness, or through achievement, which is, what most people think of when we think of, I want to be better than other people. The desire to be seen as right, not the desire to be right and to validate your own perspective, but the desire for other people to validate your perspective. That's another validation-based desire. Yeah, I think that's generally about it. But yeah, it's all rooted in that lack of self-validation, the lack of validating your own perspective, validating your guidance, embracing your rightness, embracing your awesomeness, and appreciating yourself. So yeah, once you develop that more solid core, then you can start understanding your true shadow, if you want to call it that. They're really just repressed desires for things that, over the years, people have told us are wrong when they're actually not. They're just soul-level desires, things that actually feel good to you, whether it be from other people or things that you want to do with your life, or just ways of being that you think are wrong based on what the culture has told you, or your family has told you, or your loved ones have told you. So yeah, I just had this realization recently, because I've been confused on the concept of the shadow and how that fits in with law of attraction and vibration and whatnot. But yeah, it's really just about having deeply repressed desires. One more thing I want to note on this is that I think a lot of, and this is just a theory, just something to toss around in your head, a lot of mood disorders, I don't know about other mental illnesses, but a lot of mood disorders, I believe, are based on this repressed desire for people to show that they value you and to genuinely consider you. And I mean deeply repressed, to the point where your reflex is to just invalidate yourself and submit to their perspective and tell yourself that it's wrong to want to be valued. See what that does, that level of repression causes, that level of self-denial, then it causes you to, that level of submission to others, it then causes you to lash out at them sometimes. And that contradiction between what you want and how you're repressing that and what you know that you truly are worthy of and what you're allowing yourself to have, that is sort of the basis of the symptoms of a lot of mood disorders. That is my theory. Just a last little fun note on that. Do with that what you will. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it was clear and concise enough for you to clarify really what the shadow and repressed desires are about. And ultimately, I hope this helps you release your resistance to yourself and to your very own delicious repressed desires. Love ya.